Ik heb twee interessante gasten aan tafel, namelijk de Nederlandse kunstenares Tinkebell en Mr. Rory Sutherland. Mr. Rory Sutherland is the vice chairman of the Ogilvy Group. He stands at the center of an advertisement revolution in brand identities, man and commerce. Why do we buy what we buy? And he learned us a new term today, masturbation. Mr. Sutherland, hello. We are live on air at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Sutherland.
Hello,
yeah, we are live on air.
We're just talking about euthanizing cats. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Euthanizing cats?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's a good topic.
Yeah.
You didn't talk about that. Tinkebell was earlier on stage. We'll talk about that later, maybe. We learned a lot from your talk today. You learned about euthanizing cats, but we learned that you know the Dutch word Bob.
That fascinated me. I never realized, sometime around the time I suppose I was 19 or 20, this phrase designated driver started appearing on American sitcoms and in American comedies. And that sort of soap opera thing. And I just assumed it had kind of emerged, as these words sometimes do. But it was actually quite carefully seeded by, I think, an agency working with Mothers Against Drunk Driving in the United States. And what the clever insight there is, if you have a word for something...
Like Bob, we have
like
that
Bob,
in Dutch.
When you have a name, you have a norm.
Yeah.
The very fact that there's a word for it suggests that other people are doing it as well.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, for example, if you take downsizing, before the word downsizing existed, moving from your well-paid job in London and moving to a small cottage in Cornwall was basically evidence that you'd kind of failed in life and you'd lost your job.
Yeah.
Whereas suddenly when you could call it downsizing, first of all you believed that it was a choice, not a compromise, and that lots of other people were doing it too. And Bob was the same thing. By having a name for it, you created a norm. And the Dutch did it even better than the Americans did.
Yeah.
I understand that Bob is an acronym.
Yes,
You'll tell me what it is in Dutch, because, what is it?
Well, Bob, what does it stand for? Do you know that? Is it? No. We'll ask the viewers. They can Twitter us about it. Hashtag TEDxAmsterdam if you know what Bob stands for. But let's take a look at a clip of your TED Talk today earlier on stage. We'll have a fragment of what you were talking about.
Of course. Go ahead. A brilliant case in marketing was the American case where the phrase designated driver was invented by a marketing agency for Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, who inserted it into the scripts of popular soap operas and popular panel games, just to make it a norm. Because suddenly you could explain why you were sitting there with a Diet Coke when everybody around you was drunk. You were the designated driver. Now a Dutch friend of mine, tells me that in Holland the designated driver is always called Bob. Thank you. I thought he was lying. You have confirmed my belief. Thank you.
Well, already, this is also about Bob. I didn't know that. But anyway, we know now what you think of the word Bob. I want to introduce you to the other person here at the table, Miss Tinkebell. She's a Dutch provoking artist, also had a TED Talk today. And while you were talking on stage, you were immediately a trending topic on Twitter.
I heard, yeah.
Did you realize that?
No.
No? What do you think of that? That you had that many reactions?
Well, I haven't read it, but good. I think it's good.
Yeah?
Great, yeah.
Because your talk was also about feedback and about the fact that a lot of people react to your work sometimes quite negatively.
I'm not sure, but I think that there might be people out there who are tweeting about the first part of my talk.
Yeah.
About the things I didn't do.
Yeah.
So
about the hamster and the eyes getting out of your hamster.
Yeah.
But they didn't notice the fact that it was all a provocation to talk about the reactions people give on the internet, right? Because the title of your talk is "You Want Me Dead, but Who Are You?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Why that title, and what did you want to say?
Well, actually, they asked me for a title like weeks ago, and at that time, I didn't know what I wanted to talk about. I actually decided yesterday what to do. So I just last year I wrote an article for The Guardian. Yeah. And it's actually the title of this article that was published in The Guardian, and it's about the same subject.
And it's about the fact that you get a lot of death threats, for example.
It's interesting, I mean, in several levels. One, because the internet collectively has a peculiar relationship with cats.
Yes.
I mean, lol cats. One of the greatest sites on the internet is indifferent cats in amateur porn, which shows homemade pornography, which has very bored cats just wandering through in the background. It's hysterically funny. But the internet has a strange relationship with cats, which it doesn't have with dogs, interestingly, quite to the same extent. And I think there's some work there. The other interesting thing about the provocation, which you did, is that there is a debate. You probably know that extraordinary story in sort of ethical debate about a brother and a sister who travel down to France, and while they're on holiday together, using a lot of contraception, they have sex once.
Yeah.
Brother and sister, neither of them adversely affected. They enjoyed the experience, no long-term problems. What's wrong?
Yeah.
And nearly everybody in the room will say it's wrong without being able objectively to say why they did something wrong, because no one was hurt. And there do seem to be interesting cases, and this is one of them, where you can't actually object to a behaviour on any rational grounds whatsoever. The cat was already dead when made into a bag.
She made a handbag out of her.
There was basically
cat.
no suffering.
Yeah.
And at the same time, most people will just viscerally react to this.
Yeah.
Now, what's quite interesting is that would probably have been true of most people's reaction to homosexuality in 1955, incidentally.
So what you're saying is in 50 years...
What is interesting is that you can have... First of all, these things can change patently. But secondly, I mean, Michael Mandel, who's written this great book, I think, on morality and ethics, and he argues that market values and sort of rationalism have penetrated into more or less everything to too great an extent, and there are things which we just regard as yucky, even though we can't give voice to why.
Yeah.
Mandel would probably say you did something that was slightly dubious there.
Slightly dubious.
Yes. No, obviously in rational terms it was not. I mean, equally...
But what really happened is that people made the story worse, and they made up their own stories about me. And so this the cat thing, it happened almost 9 years ago, but now I have a factory with hundreds of cats which I kill every day.
Which you don't have to.
And all the people in the Netherlands, they own a cat bag.
Yeah.
That's what's around.
Okay,
now.
enough about cats for the moment.
Yeah.
Enough about cats, because I want to know what Tinkebell was watching your TED talk. That was not about cats, it was about something completely different. Masturbation was the title. What did you think of the TED talk?
Well, I was thinking, how would you change the meaning of the word artist?
How would you change the meaning of the word artist?
It's changed fairly noticeably.
Yeah, I know,
in the last
a negative
10 to 15
way.
years, yeah.
But how can we change it back?
Because right now it has a negative connotation, you think. You want to make it more positive.
Yeah. It used to be like an elite, but in a positive way. When you were an artist, people were looking up at you. But now, I'm afraid to tell people I'm an artist.
Okay. Well, you're a brand specialist. Help her out here.
One of the problems, I suppose, is that being an artist can become... It's very interesting. If you look at the status of various things, I mean, the status of actresses in the, I guess, the 19th century and early 20th century was very, very low. I mean, saying I went out to dinner with an actress wasn't a social boast, it was an embarrassment.
Really?
What you then get is those arty and creative professions have risen considerably in social status. Interesting debate why. Is it possibly because if you have already wealthy parents, you can afford to take the risk of going into an uncertain career of that kind? It may be.
Yeah.
You know, but sometimes some of those careers are used as effectively as a euphemism for unemployment. You know,
I'm an artist.
Secondly, artists probably, because of the broadening of the definition of art, since I suppose Duchamp's urinal and ready-mades and things of that kind, doesn't necessitate any particular craftsmanship or technical ability on the part of the practitioner.
Subsidies and
yes.
That's why.
Yeah. So that's
I guess. So how can we make it into something positive?
I suppose if you look at Grayson Perry in the UK, I don't know if you're a fan or know him, but he's someone who patently places huge emphasis not only on, you know, being actually an extraordinarily interesting and original thinker, but also that art must contain some sort of craftsmanship.
Yeah.
That actually...
it's a difficult question.
Throwing paint at a canvas, I mean, it had to be done, I guess, because it was the natural extrapolation of non-representative art, I suppose, was actually, you know, at some point it had to arrive at that Duchamp urinal or paint thrown at canvases. But then returning it to something closer to craftsmanship, and of course if you look at online art, generally the thing that's appreciated is a mixture of the idea and the execution.
But you have like a huge
Okay, we have to stop this discussion.
Oh, sorry.
I'm very sorry. Well, you can keep on discussing, no problem. That's the
course.
way we started this interview as well.
Yeah.
But I'm going to round up for our viewers. But don't mind me. Just go on. Because we are going back to the TED Talks later today. First we'll have some... Ik mag weer Nederlands tegen jullie praten trouwens, dat doe ik ook vrolijk. We gaan weer verder met een aantal kleine reportages hier vanuit de Schouwburg. En zo dadelijk dan weer een aantal interessante TED Talks. Dus blijf vooral kijken. Nu een aantal reportages hier rondom TED.